Hi, everybody. This is Brendon Derr from RevExecs. I am talking today with Chris Engman. Chris is partner, author, and thought leader from Megadeals Advisory. He's coming to us from Stockholm, Sweden today. I am speaking to you from just north of Philadelphia in the United States. We are going to be talking today both about the Megadeals Advisory and the Megadeal itself. So Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'd love to talk through some background about your practice and sort of the mission behind what you all do and how that came to be.
Great talking to you, Brendon. So the whole background, it started, so I'm now 46. The story behind Megadeals actually started when I was about 25. So I've been building businesses since I was actually 10 years old. But I ran my first, let's call it real business with 35, 40 employees. We were selling software for gift certificate management into big retailers. And in the beginning, we're growing this company really well. And I was fairly junior. So I felt proud about being the rainmaker, and all deals were depending on me. In the beginning, that felt great. But then like 1-2 years later, I realized that was horrible. And the growth actually started to decline more and more. And eventually we actually failed entirely. So the company bankrupted. And apart from me being relatively junior as a leader, I made a ton of mistakes. But one thing that I could really conclude was that failing to scale enterprise marketing and sales is pivotal if you want to grow a company that sells into matrix organizations and cubes. So yeah, I was a bit let down for a period, but then when I had analyzed this, I realized if I can't get that to work, I will take a big risk with any company in the future. So I decided that I want to be part of cracking the code around larger deals. So I spent my life since that point trying to do that in various forms. So that period was actually quite sad. I lost all my money. I was owing money to the government, unpaid taxes, and my girlfriend left me. It was not a very pretty period. Anyway, but you can either be broken down by a failure, or you decide to kind of come back. So I've started luckily a few successful companies after that, and exited a few, and so I'm now an investor in 15, of which I'm the lead investor in a bit more than half of them. And I founded a few companies ever since. But along that way, I've always been working with marketing and sales towards large organizations. And during 10 years, I ran a company. We were the first account-based marketing company in the world. We started in 2007, and we quickly, after a few years, we worked with over 100 Fortune 500 companies and over 400 scale-ups in the B2B space. And what I'm now coming to how this turned into Megadeals. So one thing that I saw, we actually had a bottleneck as well, but not on the sales side, luckily. I had started to crack that code. But we had a bottleneck, which was around the workshops. And you've been in this space as well. When you're doing large deals, there are very senior decision makers setting up the tactics on how to win the deal. And we came in as marketing advisors and marketing executors around those deals. And unfortunately, together with a British guy, we were the only ones who could run those workshops. That was hard work at that point in time, but in hindsight, it was great because I don't think anyone has been in more workshops around large deals in the world than I have, because over 100 Fortune 500 companies and over 400 scale-ups, that creates a big volume. So, but often by the coffee machine in a pause when you're running these planning workshops, you're standing with someone like yourself. Okay, Brendon, so where do you read about the kind of deals you're doing? Because you're doing things that I've never seen in the traditional marketing and sales literature. And I always got the same answer where they said, well, there are no books about larger deals. So every one of these companies, either they were dependent on some super strikers, or they had created a discipline, but only for them internally. So like a 50 slides in a PowerPoint or something where it described this is how we do our large deals, but no one could point at any external literature. So I already 10 years ago, I started to collect the smartest things that companies like Siemens, Accenture, SAP, Ericsson, Lucent, all those kind of companies, what are they doing around their largest deals? I collected that and had it in a PowerPoint material, and I started to run like keynote speeches around it. Like, these are some of the main insights from some of the biggest companies in the world and their largest deals. And that theme was so popular. I got the amazing feedback, even though that was kind of unstructured. It was just a bunch of golden nuggets collected in the PowerPoint. But that confirmation, where really smart people approached me afterwards saying, well, you really picked up some seriously interesting things. I can totally relate to most of it. And you bring up things that I haven't thought about. But you've also missed this. So I got a lot of feedback from really senior deal makers. And I obviously picked it up quickly and said, okay, Brian, let's have a lunch or something. We can talk more about this. So I was kind of ad hoc collecting more and more wisdom around this. But then at a certain point in time, I said, well, because I felt such a strong drive towards this and such a blue ocean, to be honest, like there is nothing covered around this. And this is like one of the top 3 money streams in the world. The B2B space is huge. And in the B2B space, the large contracts are dominating the revenue stream. I mean, dominating, it's more than 80%. In most companies, you can have some of the biggest companies in the world, 17 accounts on their client list are representing 85% of the revenues.
Do you think that's changed at all over the last?
Sorry?
Do you think that's changed at all over the last 5-10 years, or has that been a
pretty? I can't say that there is a trend in any way, but for sure, if you look at the biggest B2B companies in the world, they have this immense concentration of revenue around a relatively small amount of customers. And I think most companies see that as a risk, but I actually flipped it a bit. I said, what if that made them that large? What if the leap into large deals made them giants? Because honestly, when looking at the biggest companies in the world, I have still not found an exception. So all the B2B companies on the top list have become that large thanks to a few significant contracts. Mm-hmm. So you can see the same also from looking at scale up. So if you take, for example, SaaS companies, at about $3 to $7 million ARR, they need to go upstream. If they want to keep their growth rate, they need to start to sell into companies that are all of a sudden no longer a pyramid organization, but a matrix or even a cube or a 52-armed octopus, like a Bank of America or something. So all of a sudden, they move into that space, at least if they want to continue their growth. Mm-hmm. So yeah, a lot of data points that the fact that you need to be pretty good at doing the larger contracts if you want to be a large player or if you want to become a large player. So yeah, anyway.
Your growth.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, so continuing on the same path, when looking at the biggest companies in the world, you find that first of all, the revenue is very concentrated around like 10 to 30, 40 accounts. When you do look at those deals, you ask them internally, so who are your top strikers? Which people need to be involved in the deals for them to materialize? They point at like 4 or 5 names. So even the biggest companies in the world have a huge dependency on top strikers. We call them rainmakers. It's drought in Sudan, and the rainmaker is kind of magic man, comes in and brings the rain. And so since so much money is concentrated around so few accounts, and then internally it's carried by so few people, is a very interesting topic. What if you can get this to scale, which is kind of our mission. And I think we've succeeded pretty well with that. It's the recipe seems to work.
So you've talked about the mega deal in almost an extreme sense, which I'm sure that is what you mean, right?
Mm.
That extremely large. How much does your research and what you do as a practice apply to what most companies would consider their large deals? So maybe not the complete game-changing mega deal.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. I'll just add one thing before we leave the previous topic. So we then did serious research around this. Like we found mega deals from around the world. We made deep interviews to really do it the more academic or the more scientific way. That then became the Megadeals discipline and the Megadeals book that is now on Amazon, on Ellen, all platforms you want. Yeah, going back to your question. So is it only applicable to the multi-billion-dollar deals? No. So in the beginning, we actually thought that this discipline is from a certain amount and up. So actually in the book, we're talking about $10 million and up. So we've looked at deals in the range of $10 million all the way up to $15 billion. And people say, well, that must be M&A. No, supplier, customer, $15 billion actually from the airline industry. Anyway, but what we've realized, especially in the last 2 years, is that as soon as you fulfill 3 criteria, the Megadeals discipline apply to you. So first one is you're selling into it's no longer a pyramid organization you're selling into. So they've now become a matrix or a cube or this 52-armed octopus, as I was joking about a few minutes ago. Then all of a sudden, so that's criteria number 1. Because when you sell to a pyramid, you can get the leadership team in one room. When you sell into a matrix or a cube or an octopus, you just can't. It's like, whoa, I'm inside this huge organization and they're not even talking to each other. It's like huge gaps between the teams. And it's this, yeah, that's criteria number 1. Criteria number 2 is that you in your sales, yeah, you might start the sales with one salesperson, but at some point you sell as a team. So you come together and form yourself as a team towards that client. So it's not a one-man band, it's a real team sales effort. And the third criteria is the customer buying from you as a cross-functional team? So if you're selling something that has to do with more than one function, it's not just finance, it's not just marketing, it's not just, so it's actually a cross-functional thing you're selling. If those 3 apply, you're 100% matched with the Megadeals discipline. And that goes back to your question. So a lot of the companies that we do work with, they're actually SaaS companies, and their deal size is completely different to the one we researched, but they're selling like a business-related system of some sort where they need to get approvals from tech, from marketing, from finance, from some process people, etc. So you're all of a sudden selling into this really tricky environment, and you as your alone salesperson can't pull it off. You need to bring in tech experts and some customer success people and integration people. Yeah.
So that whole ecosystem that you just described, it's a complex one, and it's certainly not something that your average business developer is experiencing when they're selling, a more average deal. Who is best suited to lead that effort? When a new, or I guess, who are you seeing leading that effort at companies who are doing this really well? Is this a discipline that resides in sales, or is there a new breed?
Right. Well, first of all, most of the time we start off by running a few workshops with the leadership team and some more people, especially from marketing and sales and sometimes customer success. So typically 4 half days, and we do it on one existing account that they want to grow and one new account that they want to penetrate. And we say, okay, this is how you work now. If you would follow the Megadeals discipline, this is how you should work or would work following that. And they go, wow, we want to work like that. So, but then, to be honest, in most cases, there is no one. We've seen exceptions to this, but very rarely do they have an internal change agent that can pull off the transformation. So we've actually formulated a follow-up offering where so to put it like this, the sales side actually can be upgraded with a few trainings. So we run a few trainings with them on how to act in front of a video camera, how to do enterprise social selling, how to work with content together with marketing, and this is some examples. So a few trainings, we can upgrade them to the more modern mega dealer. The marketing side, though, has often failed because it's first understaffed entirely. So most companies are completely underspending on their marketing. The best companies in the mega space that we've looked at are actually spending an equal amount of money on their marketing as they do with their sales. And they do that by either cutting some of the salespeople and move that money into marketing, or they just simply increase their marketing spend. And we actually see that this number in a few years will be higher, with higher marketing spend than sales spend. And that's number one, which is a bit tricky. So they need to beef up their marketing. And secondly, they need to learn new skills, because typically marketing teams in the B2B space are way too lead centric. So they've taken the mechanics from the transactional B2B world, and they try to apply it on the enterprise and Megadeals B2B world, where you focus on MQLs. And so we're right now working on a video where you have this fortress, and inside the fortress you have the client organization, and you have your own organization trying to sell to them, approaching this fortress, and you're kind of cracking a hole into a door, and you're releasing one soldier with a sword into this client organization. That we completely hammered, completely smashed, right? So when you apply the lead generation and then you leave sales alone, they'll be destroyed. So you need to learn new skills. So oftentimes we actually say, okay, let us set up and run the marketing factory for you towards your largest existing and potential accounts for 6 to 12 months, and then you insource it as a step 2. So instead of us coaching you, we come in and run it as an outsourced function, either towards some specific deals or for an entire segment or something. And then we say, okay, now you can take the factory back. But then they know, it's easier to take over an existing working machinery than it is to design it, set it up, the KPIs, the integrations, all that kind of stuff. So we have made a standard version that we tweak, but just slightly for each client. So we put it in, and we do it so fast that it's so. And I know the reason why customers are buying this is that they can't run the risk of failing this for 2 years. They don't have that time. So it's time to market and low risk. Those are the reasons that we've heard from our clients. That's why they buy it. And we run it in full transparency. And then after 6 months or longer, they can take it back and insource it.
I can certainly see how that could, as you point out, be a staffing challenge, because most roles in marketing design.
I mean, most of the modern roles you need to run marketing towards larger accounts, you just simply have too few of them. I mean, even if you take the best headhunter in the world, you actually don't find those profiles. So most of the time, when I recruit, for example, we bring in people and we transform them, and then we put them into our factories.
Who do you typically see coordinating all of this? When a firm goes out to win a
it's off. So most of the time, so we typically sell it. So if it's a scale up, like 50 to a few hundred employees scale up, which is our most common client, we typically sell it to the CEO, but the CEO doesn't coordinate it, to your point. So it's typically coordinated by a head of marketing. So the head of marketing is very rarely buying it, because they're a bit defensive, to be honest, overall. Not always, but they're slightly defensive because we're coming in with a different recipe, and they can build something up, which doesn't work so well, but they've still built it up. So we typically get a buy-in from the CEO or a head of a region or something, and then they say, okay, this is what we need to do. And I mean, there are never any problems downstream. So but we just need to sell it that. But then it's typically coordinated by the head of marketing and in collaboration with the head of sales, but mainly head of marketing. We are in the journey of the 6 to 24 months we work with the client. We're also injecting certain sales trainings that are making them move into the modern version of a mega dealer.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Is the marketing area the most common gap you're finding in the average B2B organization when you're?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. So again, the sales side has gaps, but it's actually, that is manageable.
Okay.
With a few half days of training, you can upgrade them. The marketing side, you need to transform. So upgrade versus transform. Not only transform, but also beef up and transform, which is a much, as you can imagine, a much bigger quantum leap.
Yeah, well, I love that perspective because I think most organizations feel the pressure of upskilling, up-leveling their sales organization to multiply the rainmakers.
But I'm glad you brought that up, because one of our biggest findings is that it's very hard to find more rainmakers, or to take the average salesperson and upgrade him to be a rainmaker. Yeah, you can upgrade him to some extent, but our biggest finding is that your best recipe for growth is to reduce your sales force. You keep the best ones and you run serious marketing around them. So they have this, so imagine the fortress again, when instead of dropping one soldier, you drop many soldiers, and you have airplanes flying over with bombs, and you have the big tanks crushing the walls. So it's a front, what do you call the front attack? It's a multi-party attack, coordinated.
One other question that just came to my mind is this for net new pursuits only, or do you see?
No. So in our research, most really large deals are done with an existing client. So you have come in, because it's very much about trust. You have come in, you've sold something to them early, and they like you, they trust you, they see that whenever things go bad, you sort it out with them, because it's typically something goes bad. Mm-hmm. You sort it out with them in a great way, and you have a great sync from a kind of corporate values point of view, etc. Then they go, okay, we like these guys, and they really perform well. Then when you are up for the larger deals, you are really progressed and really well positioned for that second stage. So it's a land and expand most of the time. We've seen very few large deals coming in as a big bang. It's typically a land and expand. But the Megadeals discipline is applicable both for growing existing accounts and winning new logos. But it's a lot about how big organizations work, because they're unsynchronized normally. It's a lot of arms and legs, and it's a lot of internal politics. So it's a lot about running a multi-front war, where you infiltrate them and you go through many doors at the same time, and use many different tools. So we use, for example, 14 different MarTech tools and media tools to infiltrate these organizations. And we use a library of content to shoot into the right people, and it's synchronized with what sales are doing. So that machinery is really effective. And I think a lot of the advantage comes from having done several hundred ABM projects in the past, with those kind of war rooms, discussing these large deals, and then doing the research and all that. And now we run a bigger machinery, not just the marketing, but the whole thing, with content, with messaging, and more tactics.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're a CEO, CRO, revenue executive, you know this is a weakness in your organization, and you're thinking about with intent pressing in on this, becoming better. Organizationally speaking, not as much from a frameworks or a process perspective, but organizationally, where do you start as a leader to begin this transformation process?
Right. It depends on how big you are.
Okay.
So if you're a company 22, a few hundred employees, you can start with the workshops, and then we run the factory, and then you insource the factory. if you're a bigger company, like we work with the two largest companies in the world, we also work with the equivalent of Lockheed Martin, but here in Europe, sort of really large companies doing seriously large deals. With them, the transformation typically, so not to disclose who they are, but with most of them, we do two things. So we run a multitude of workshop series with various teams, but we also come in and it's kind of the factory, but we call it deal orchestration. So with larger companies, we can't say, so Brendon, we take over your marketing. That doesn't work. So what we do is that we do it for specific deals. So for specific pursuits. So let's say you would be the CRO for a company with a few $1 billion in revenue. So it's a fairly large company. You would never dare to give us the full access to the whole marketing. That would never happen. So what you say is that, guys, I really like this. We've now run a few workshops and my teams are buying into this. So why don't you come in and surgically help us with this, and this deal? So here's 5 existing accounts that we want to grow. We have a clear idea on how to grow them. We just need the bigger machinery around making that a success. Then we have these 7 accounts that we really want to enter. So then we make we call that deal orchestration. So we're like the deal support team, but we come in for a few specific deals, and then those are creating a new best practice that is then marketed internally. Like, look, we've now done these workshops and we've been doing this for a few specific deals. This is how it went. This is how we did it. Now we want to expand that.
As somebody who's also come from the management consulting field, I can see this. I can see this being something incredibly difficult to push forward by yourselves internally, but at the same time, incredibly exciting when you hire an advisor like yourselves to come in and sort of infuse some fresh thinking. Because I think it's probably pretty commonplace for most B2B firms to be struggling with this at some level.
Yeah. And we have and we use we eat our own dog food, as you can say in the US. So we're using the same machinery on ourselves. And I mean, we're still a relatively small company. We're growing really fast, and we already have a handful of clients in North America, in Europe, and Asia. Even though we're not physically present in all those places, because I think there's, like I said to you earlier, like there was, even when I started looking at this many years ago, it's a blue ocean. No one has really covered it, and I think it's also, when I look at candidates for our own company, very few people are deeply skilled in both heavy marketing towards large deals and the sales side. You rarely find those profiles. So it's not necessarily super simple to recruit those candidates. So I think we face very weak competition. So typically we either meet like, well, we think we should try to do this internally. That's one of the decisions that a customer is making. And then if they say, okay, we think we can't pull this off internally, we'll use someone externally. So typically they're looking at us with an integrated discipline for marketing, sales, social selling, etc., for larger deals, or they look at, okay, should we bring in a marketing agency, some MarTech firm, a sales coach, a LinkedIn coach, and try to mix it up ourselves. Now that has a big risk, because it's hard to design something from 4 or 5 different things into one. That's pretty intellectually demanding. And then if you manage to do it, how do you get a team of 20 to 1,000 to 2,000 people to follow a discipline that has been made by 5 disciplines? So I think we seem to be, I think that's why we're growing so fast. We get very high customer grades. We managed to create a discipline that is cross-functional for larger deals, and to our earlier discussion, it's applicable as soon you start to, even for like a few $100,000 and a few $1 million, as soon as you start to sell into a cross-functional buying team, and they're no longer a pyramid, they're a matrix or even more complex, then it turns from classic sales into orchestration. So Megadeals is an orchestration discipline. And this is why it's different. Like that was what was not documented in earlier sales and marketing literature.
Yeah, no more linear process from a sales.
No, it's not. And I think most people that have studied some of the like challenger sales or solution selling or spin selling or some of the marketing books, they go, well, actually, yeah, I can see some of that in my deals, but it's actually more complex than that.
Mm-hmm.
People are switching jobs, titles. There are like so many moving parts. And when you have so many moving parts, just following a linear process from those, I love those books, by the way, I studied them, but they're too simplified. They're too linear, as you said. It's not a linear process, it's orchestration.
Well, Chris, I think you all have done a wonderful job of articulating what many are feeling and thinking deep down inside and just haven't been able to put into words. So thank you for the great talk. And if people are interested in going further and learning more about Megadeals and what you all do, where can they go to find out more?
So at megadeals.com, you find some resources, you find us, and please reach out to me on LinkedIn. So Christopher Engman, so CH and PH, and Engman with an E. I think those are the two main channels. I mean, I'm playing around with TikTok, Instagram. I do all of those because it's one of my internal roles is to be the R&D guy. So I always test and try to innovate new things. We're playing around with avatar right now. Like, how can an avatar be a part of the deal team? Like, and some of the things we play around with, we will actually cancel. We just test it and say, okay, no, doesn't apply. Yeah. So I'm on all those channels, but right. LinkedIn and Megadeals.com. Yeah.
All right. Or the latest social media fad.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
All right, Chris. Well, thank you very much again. Have a great day.
Thank you, Brendon. My pleasure.